Thanks so much for listening. Before getting into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that I would love to add value to you, your organization, and those you serve through speaking, training, professional development, or coaching. Over the last year, I've been fortunate to work with those in higher education, pre-K-12, and more recently, the corporate space. To learn more, visit my website at cjleadership.com or send me an email at chris@cjleadership.com. I can't wait to hear from you, and now on to our episode. Hello, welcome back to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. Always so grateful that you take time out of your busy day as a leader to either listen or watch. Really appreciate that. Today, as always, really excited to have our guest. Today we're joined by Mr. Patrick Crowdis, currently superintendent at USD 431 in Hoisington, Kansas, finishing up his fifth year in that role. Before that, he was middle and high school principal in Spearville, Kansas, and he held that role for 10 years. Before that, he served as the assistant principal and athletic director in McPherson Middle School in McPherson, Kansas for 2 years, and then started in the classroom as a physical science teacher. I've known Patrick through my work, through my role at Fort Hays State University, and really know that he has great leadership advice and a great journey to share with you. So you're going to enjoy today's episode. So Patrick, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. I'm very humbled to be here. I listen to your podcast, and I'm one of the few that are not a doctorate or a CEO of a huge corporation or so just honored to be here with you.
I tell you what, you certainly belong at the table as a guest. I think things we'll talk about today, people will learn some of the great things that you're doing currently and have done. For our listeners, Patrick has spent most of his professional career in K-12, come up through the ranks, has had some really good mentors. I know for a fact he had a great mentor. I'm guessing at McPherson, and we can tell you why here that is for those of us that live in Kansas. But Patrick, just start out and give us a little bit about your professional/leadership journey in education.
Sure. I took a non-traditional route to get to the classroom. I graduated with a psychology degree from McPherson College and then went into the workforce after that degree and found myself in a hole about 10 foot deep, block long, replacing a water line, and about 110 degrees that day. And I said, man, I really need to find something else to do. And that same summer, I had the opportunity to work with the football team. They were in between coaches, and I was able to work with them in the weight room and conditioning drills through the summer, and really enjoyed that. So was able to go to Barton County, had a program through Newman University, and I started talking to them and went ahead and talked to some of my mentors at the time about the career track. Which subject area. I had enough credits. I could go into social studies or I could go into science. And I mean, it was almost immediate. They said science. So it was always an interest of mine, went into science, and taught 6 years. During, one of my early years and one of my early evaluations, the principal, Kevin Abbott, said, have you thought about administration? And really, honestly, I had not. It had never really occurred to me, but went ahead and began that process. After moving up to Gardner and teaching up there and beginning the whole process of getting into a master's program through Emporia State and teaching and coaching and getting married and having kids, working after 8 o'clock on master's classes and getting that certification in building leadership, and had the opportunity to go back to Nickerson and actually do my practicum under Mr. Abbott and learn a lot about not necessarily the day to day of administration, but the reflection piece of administration. Reflection of activities that are being put on, but then also reflection of what is going on in the classroom. And so my perspective became bigger, and then moved to McPherson. Took on that role in a 5A district as a first year administrator. Again, great mentor at the middle school, but then also as a district, learning how to develop relationships within the profession, with Dr. Watson, our current commissioner of education. So had the opportunity to work with him and some other great administrators there at McPherson. And then, the opportunity came open for our family to move back to my wife's hometown. And so we moved to Spearville. Um, I was pretty green as an administrator. And so had a very patient superintendent, Mr. Daryl Stegman. He's retired now, but he was an excellent mentor to just show me, you know, how to grow and to expand and expand my capacity, and again expand that perspective from the classroom to a building, and then he helped me to expand that perspective to the district as a whole. There at Spearville, we were able to do several projects at Spearville, and just working with him on how bigger projects would work. And then after 10 years, opportunity came open, and I jokingly tell everybody I took the year off and went over to Dodge City High School and was an assistant principal at Dodge City High School. Spearville, I had 6 through 12, 200 students in the building. 9 through 12 at Dodge City High School is 2,000 students. So everything was 10 times bigger. One of the reasons I decided to make the move was I did 14 activities at Spearville in the month of April. My time at Dodge City, I did 14 activities for the whole year. So I had so much more support staff. Had the opportunity and a great pleasure to work with probably one of the finest leaders I've ever worked with is Jackie Feist. She was the high school principal at Dodge City High School for 25 maybe plus years. Again, basically running a city under one roof, and the knowledge that she brought and the ability to just model what true leadership and servant leadership is, and still maintain a friendship with her today. And then the opportunity came open to become superintendent, and I jumped at that. I had applied at the same position before, and just the opportunity didn't present itself. And I'm a firm believer that God's timing is perfect. So we decided to move to Hoisington. My children were going to be seventh graders and sophomores, and so coming out of COVID, we decided to make that move. And I've been here 5 years, and then just recently, I was approached by the new superintendent at Dodge City, Jason Scheck. He approached me, and just through some reflection and prayer, and I went ahead and have accepted the position as their financial director or CFO at Dodge City Public Schools for next year, and will be taking over there July 1 officially. Have already started that process of touching base with the staff, which I'll be working with a group of ladies that are very qualified, very experienced, and I look forward to working and learning from them, and being back in the Dodge City area. I'm actually looking forward to doing that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So much to unpack there. Looking forward to getting to that. But one thing that really stood out to me, And if our listeners, I'm sure they caught this as well, you probably listed or mentioned five, six, seven people's names. One of the many indicators of a true leader, certainly a servant leader, as you know, is who else, who else have they mentored? The saying is, if you cure the common cold but don't tell anybody, have you really cured the common cold? And if you call yourself a leader but you haven't really helped bring other people along, are you actually a leader? So I think that's so valuable, and kudos to you for mentioning their names.
Yes.
And as you said, you were tutored and led by the current commissioner of education for the state of Kansas. With if you're not familiar with our state, you don't get that job in any state unless you're a good leader. You obviously have worked at small schools, big schools. So, to what extent do you want to expand on the role that mentors have played? And then the flip side of that is when you finally got the official title and all of those things that come with it, what have you done to intentionally mentor and bring others up as your mentors have done for you?
Sure. It's been so important to have have different mentors. I mean, this goes all the way back to for me, goes all the way back to elementary school. Teachers that were high quality individuals, coaches, administrators. I had the amazing fortune to be able to grow up in the same exact town that my dad grew up in. My dad actually was on the school board, and then the majority of my high school career, my dad's best friend from high school was our superintendent. And so, this is a person that I had the opportunity to, and he's familiar to Kansas, and he was at Coldwater and Hugoton, David Self. And I mean, we have had conversations, that you just don't get to have. And, with just most people don't have with their superintendent. So, that started way back then. And then, at college, whether it was a coach or, you know, my one of my greatest friends, Dave Barrett, being just a mentor while we were in college. And then, those things have just grown and given me a model to then, hopefully perpetuate that. Education, whether, I'm more familiar with the K-12 idea, but I'm sure whether it's higher ed or whatever, but K-12 education is a small world. And so that interaction that you have with somebody um, is going to have ripple effects, because that person knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that eventually, could come back around, positive or negative. I've always been a relatively positive person, and so I hope I then, am able to, give that off whenever I have those interactions, and meeting people. And I'm kind of an introvert in some aspects of my life, but I really do like the socialization part of some of the aspects of superintendency, and some of the administrative parts. And we were able to get together, whether it be as superintendents and things. But no, the mentorship piece and how people have guided me, um, given me advice. Sometimes I listened. Other times maybe my pride got in the way and I didn't listen so much. But it's still a piece of information that resonates with me, maybe later, maybe 5, 10 years later down the road. And so the mentorship has been really, really important. One thing that I did personally was, my wife had some health issues. So when she started having health issues, we spent a lot of time at doctors and appointments and in the hospital. Well, social media, after a while, you're just looking at the same thing. And so I just started downloading books and podcasts. And so one of the books that my wife and I, you know, became aware of John Wooden passing away. And so we both started researching, kind of the leadership philosophy of John Wooden and his pyramid. And so that would have been kind of maybe some of the foundational pieces to my leadership journey to grow. I mean, I already had the title of principal, but I would probably say at that point in time I was just a facilitator, not really a leader. And so I was in the role, but not really leading very effectively. And I then went on to read Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership. And I'll be honest with you, I read that to change my staff. I wanted them to be more employee driven as opposed as no, I wanted them to take more ownership, not necessarily be just an employee, but to be an owner and to and really after reading that book, I discovered that maybe I'm the one that needed to change. I was the cap on the leadership potential. And so it was real evident that I needed to expand my vocabulary, needed to expand my perspective overall. And so I started listening to the EntreLeadership podcast. And in the course of about, maybe 18 months, I read probably 14 books, nothing major, nothing big, but authors like Patrick Lencioni, John Gordon, um, oh, Simon Sinek, Dayton Moore, more Wooden stuff. I mean, some of those seminal business leadership um, um, authors that are out there, and um, you know, then take that and apply it back to what we were doing at Spurville to kind of make some changes. And so, working through that process really expanded my opportunity to lead and grow, and then just give more opportunity. So if I am working through a process with another person, whether it be another building principal, a teacher, a student, just more tools to draw from in terms of how to work through those situations. And not everything I read was super deep, but I read a lot of the oh Robertsons from Duck Dynasty. I read all their books, but some of it's funny and good, but every single one of them had lessons in them, and tried to just expand my perspective and potential so that when I next came in contact with somebody, I potentially had that ability to help them.
Well, I'm glad those that listening, hope this resonates. I know it does with me. Is what Patrick shared is something that is hard to do, but I think everyone should do this. He displayed a leader superpower, and that's vulnerability. First and foremost, while we could all spend a lot of money to become better leaders, and sometimes it's worth it, there's also a lot of free or affordable ways to improve ourselves. He mentioned it: books, podcasts, videos. And you also said you recognize that you were that cap. And as John Maxwell, one of his 21 irrefutable laws of leadership is that law of the lid.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure that it is a rare occurrence when a leader not only recognizes that they have room to grow, but the extent to which doing so is going to also essentially open up more space for those that they lead. And
Mhm.
so I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that, or one of the authors you mentioned, and I know that this is, we've talked about this before, but I think for this show, most people would like to know that, whether it was planned or not, you spent a lot of one-on-one time with John Gordon. If you're listening to this and you're in the leadership space and don't know who that is, just do a Google search. Great books. You probably heard of the Energy Bus. And not only did you get to spend some time, but you somehow got him to come to rural Kansas.
Yes, we were very fortunate. So if you're from Kansas and you're probably around Dr. Jochum's or my age, you probably remember the Feist phone book. And the Feist phone book was it was actually a book for younger members of the audience. It was an actual book that had phone numbers in it. And in the front, because nobody had any numbers in their phone because you didn't have a cell phone, but in the front was the white pages, and in the back was the yellow pages. And then the unique thing about the Feist phone book was in the middle there was all kinds of information about all of the communities that regional, because it there were like 4 or 5 regions in Kansas, and they covered Oklahoma. I'm not sure if they covered Nebraska, but it was, I mean, and Tom Feist was a seminal character in the phone book companies, because he actually took a court all the way to the Supreme Court. Okay, so this is a long, yeah, to actually make that be public information. And so that's kind of a long way to say that Tom Feist was a visionary. He's an excellent leader, which I've done some research on him as well. But when Tom passed away, he set up a foundation that allowed for nonprofits in Spearville, which is not very big, to request funds. And so my superintendent asked me, what is something that you want me to request from the Feist Foundation? And I said, I want John Gordon to come to Spearville, Kansas. And John has been very open that, I mean, if he is going to travel somewhere, it is going to be worth his while. And so, I mean, he's worth it. But we asked him to come, and it was springtime in Kansas. It was towards the end of the school year, and weather did not cooperate. I was supposed to pick him up in Garden City at, like, let's say 4 in the afternoon, and I ended up picking him up in Wichita at 1:30 at night, or 1:30 in the morning. And so we had the opportunity to travel back from Wichita to Dodge City, where we had a room for him, and spend that time talking about, why he wrote this book, and what was this, what is the future look for the John Gordon organization. And then, he came and spoke. He spoke to our staff. We invited staffs from other area schools to try to give the biggest impact as possible. And our students had the opportunity to be there as well. And so he did an amazing job. We had a great opportunity for him to speak into the lives of those around. And then he was supposed to fly out of Dodge City. Well, again, weather did not allow that. And so I got to then take him back to Wichita, and another 2.5 hours of one-on-one quality opportunity to ask and talk, ask questions of, and talk to John Gordon. So amazing individual, just a great person. Not only all of the books and leadership, and it's really interesting now to see and think back on those conversations, because he had not started doing the trainings, but had started talking that, okay, books are great, but trainings are going to be the opportunity for the exponential growth of his leadership philosophies. And so, just wonderful to see how that has grown. And I know you've had one of his top level trainers on the podcast, and excellent content to go back and listen to that.
Yeah, it's Julie Nee,
Mhm.
who I connected with at the Human X conference, which I've plugged many times. It's end of June in Omaha, and that's The CEO of that is Brad Black, and again, we're just not only is K-12 a small world, but I guess any world that you that you pay attention to is small. And again, I mean that's yet another. You spend 5 hours in a car with someone like that. I think it's fair to count John Gordon as a mentor as well. And I think that's. I think that that shows a lot of vision and innovation because for those people that are listening that aren't familiar with rural America, I'm from rural Nebraska. We determine a big town or a small town by how far do you got to drive to get to a Walmart. And so people that are maybe from a different part of the country, they might think a community of 20,000 is small. Well, where we live, that's the local Walmart hub, right? And the fact that
Right.
you have more than one stoplight and all of those things makes it makes it not rural. So if you're not familiar with Kansas, what you said with getting John Gordon to Spearville is kind of a planes, trains, and automobile story
Hmm.
because it's not accessible really by any airport. As we record this, you're at a significant transition point with your career, and I know you're going to do great things at Dodge City. What are some things now as you look back as a leader? Some things that I guess you can fill in the blanks, but I'm just thinking overall, if you reflect on what are some wins, what are some things maybe we learned, I guess just share some of those thoughts as you come to the conclusion of both a school year and a successful tenure in your current position.
I think that reflection piece, and thank you for the compliment about going to Dodge. It's exciting, but I think the reflection piece is something that we probably get so wrapped up in everything that many times that we don't take that time to do that. And I've talked to my kids over the past couple of years, just some things to kind of keep in mind as they get to be into adulthood, and rest and reflection is definitely one of those things that we've talked about as a family, and taking that time to do that, whether it's purposeful or whether it's just as just sitting around watching TV or whatever. you know, as I'm kind of wrapping up my tenure here at Hoisington, and preparing to move on, and obviously, looking at the past year, one of the things that really comes to mind to begin with is just how consistent was I with some things, and there are some things that I put in place at the beginning of the year, or had ideas to do in the beginning of the year, and then didn't follow through, whether it was just because it didn't happen, or just because time got busy, and I didn't carve out enough time. We met on either a weekly, biweekly, or monthly basis as individuals and my admin. So myself, I would take touch points. We had three things that we were looking at over the course of the year, and we were touching base on those, touching base on other things that might be going on in the building, touching base with them personally. Just to I wanted to touch base with them, um, because that burnout, and that mental exhaustion, is a real thing in K-12 administration, and I wanted to be in their corner for that. So we did a great job of that. I would probably say right up until spring break. And then after spring break, I mean, it's basically a roller coaster ride. Hang on, and let's get to the end of the school year. And we've not done as good a job with that. And that consistency, I think, is important. And so that would definitely be a an area that I would want to improve on. As I'm kind of wrapping up my tenure here at Hoisington, it's really tying up loose ends, and making sure that I leave the district as good or better than I found it. Making sure that when I walk out the door, and the next person steps into this seat, that they have as much knowledge as I can pass on to them, to help them make the best decisions, as they come in. So that transition piece is really important to me. I've made some administrative changes, and when you walk into an office and there's no information, um, it takes you a little while to get your feet underneath you, and that's basically what I came into as a superintendent, and I had a lot of great support people around me to help fill in some of the gaps. But sometimes it takes a little while to get some of those gaps filled in. But if I can help that next person, that's a really important piece, and make sure that they're able to kind of hit the ground running, and in a positive way, and not give them a bunch of stuff to weigh them down to begin with, but to help them, in the transition as well.
Well, and I think that's another quality of a strong leader is I always say character comes out on the way out. You know, when we bring somebody into an organization, the most visible thing is their resume and accolades, right? Because that's
Mhm.
what we do. You know, so and so is the new fill in the blank. Here's their bio. You know, I work in higher ed. It's not that uncommon to post their resume, especially when they're interviewing. But I always say true character comes out on the way out. And that really does show not only that shows a desire to help the next person. And if we leave it like you said, better than we found it, and if the majority of the people would said, "Good job, I'd work with you again," in my mind,
Mhm.
that's a great legacy and a job well done in many ways. So I appreciate you sharing that, and certainly looking forward to learning more down the road as you transition into yet another leadership job, but one that leads certainly from a different standpoint, being in
Mhm.
charge of finances and things like that. And if you're not familiar, that is, like he said, it is a large it's by any means it is a large school district with many students, a lot of moving parts, and obviously a lot of opportunities to influence not only the adults in the building, but ultimately the kids that show up every day. So as we close, I like to kind of as a final question, I like to ask a lot of my guests, what are you currently either working on, studying in terms of professional development, or because you have a lot going on, if and when you get the time, what's on your list to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I have a couple books that I'm reading right now, and just trying to get a feel for you know trying to get a feel for just what that next step is. The meaning of life is one that I'm currently reading, and I haven't read that before. It just felt like a good time to read that. Um, the other piece is, the unknown that's coming up. I mean, it's I've done the budget and I've worked with the budget in the K-12 realm, but I haven't had as many moving parts, and so that's going to be a huge learning curve to work with somebody in that role, and work with an office staff that's larger than what I currently have, and but then there is time to relax and reflect, or just get away. My kids and I have had the opportunity to vacation in the past, and so my son gets to take a vacation to Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training, and my daughter and I are going to go to Hawaii to and so we're going. He enlisted after I had made plans, so he's going to do that. We're going to do the other, and then I'm hoping we'll have the opportunity to get out of town a little bit, and um, rest at a cabin that we have in Angel Fire through our family, and prepare for the journey ahead, and just kind of work through the process of learning a new district. And one of the things that's most important to me is figuring out where the coffee pot is in the office, and so we'll get there and learn all the ins and outs, and start that process July 1, and have a good time doing it. So
Well, I don't. One thing that I can a mentor who I trust their opinion one time about budget said, it's just another comma. It's just another zero. And, and in some extent, I'll admit, I look at, if you can't be trusted with a little, you can't be trusted with a lot. So
Mhm.
to me, one's ability to budget has not as much to do with the amount as it is the stewardship with which they
Right.
oversee
Right.
it. But
Yep.
maybe in a few months you can tell me if the advice of, well, it's just another comma and a few extra zeros.
You, I have had that probably told to me by pretty much every single um, person that I've talked to that has been in a bigger district. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's in many ways, as you know, it's I think it's those that have managed to budget on a little could
Hmm.
probably shown a lot of acumen there. But
Yeah.
well, anyway, Patrick, obviously wish you all the best. I'll have to maybe reconnect again. I've
Yes.
been doing this podcast long enough that lo and behold, I have people that are willing to come on again and give me updates. And so I think it'd be very interesting once you kind of get settled, get you on here again and maybe talk about financial leadership and what that looks like. Because again, you're helping kids.
Hmm.
It's just from a different perspective, but certainly you're helping everyone in the district, everyone in many ways in the community. So personally, I'm excited to learn about that and hear what's going on. Well, I appreciate it as always, Patrick. Thank you so much for giving your valuable time and wonderful insight. And to the listeners and those that might be watching, I also thank you, and we will see you next time.